Annyeong. Well, Deba is the word which comes to mind as one sees the giant sweep that's been made by the K waves. Well, K-pop, K-drama, K-beauty, the K phenomena, there's no stopping it. And well, InKo presents its newly initiated platform, which is actually called Annyeong Station to promote conversations, interactions, and cross-cultural exchange of ideas between India and Korea on its many platforms. And honestly, they're doing a lot that I've also lost count of it. So on our first episode of the K Lounge, we decided to discuss one of the most popular aspects of the Korean wave, which has as smoothly as butter made its way into our lives. Any guesses? Well, yes, it's K-pop, a dynamite on global charts, streaming platforms, and well, our own playlists as well. So as K-pop hits a high note with fans across, K-pop stars have also become socio-cultural ambassadors between South Korea and the rest of the world. And joining me today is an awesome panel. These ladies need no introduction, and I'm very, very envious of them because they're the ones who get to interact with the K-pop stars, the ones that we watch and wish were part of their entourage. So joining me today is Nikita from Pink Box Events, where she's the girl to look out for and catch up with because she's the one who organizes these concerts. And Riddhi Chakraborty, who's the assistant editor of Rolling Stones magazines. You know, of course, I'm sure you've been following her interviews, her videos from BTS to Tomorrow into Together. I mean, there is no one that she hasn't met. And we'll be joined by Monica Yadav in a bit as well. So Riddhi and Nikki, I want to ask you, when was the first time that you came across K-pop? Because I'll be honest, I belong to the Psy generation and I discovered K-pop through K-dramas. Like Dream High introduced me to Tachyon and 2PM. And, I watched Reply 1997 and the entire fangirling and the culture, the pop culture with hot, I understood that. And then, of course, EXO was through Baekhyun and Do. So, Riddhi, I'll start with you. Who was the first K-pop singer or artist that you had heard?
Well, I think the first I ever heard was Psy with Gangnam Style. Got to credit him for that. In 2012, he started the entire movement, that particular era of the Hallyu wave. So definitely after finding Gangnam Style, I got very curious about okay, so music from South Korea, what else is there? I really want to know. And right after that, I found Big Bang and their song Fantastic Baby, and I completely was enamored with their leader G Dragon, and I've been a fan of his since 2012 and counting, and that eventually led to me discovering all the other artists. It's a great path.
Awesome. And what about you, Nikki?
For me, so because I grew up in Northeast, I think I had a very early exposure to it. My first K movie was the classic, which was released in 2001-ish. So that was like my first thing with movies. And then we used to watch K-dramas, Stairway to Heaven, Autumn in My Heart. This was like early 2000. With K-pop, I discovered it with DBSK. And I kind of heard a few of the songs. I heard a few of Super Junior songs and I loved it. But then I wasn't really into it. And I would say for me, Big Bang was the reason that I started becoming, a huge K-pop fan. And because Big Bang had just debuted and I started following them. And I think I would say that I've been a fan of K-pop ever since I can remember because as you all know, from my side of the country, we are not very exposed to the Bollywood elements. So I think I would say that my exposure was mostly K-pop and a little bit of Western music. So,
and correct me if I'm wrong, was Big Bang that featured in Glee, the musical? Their song, Fantastic. If I'm wrong, I think I had read about that. I could be wrong. You are the experts here. And we have Monica Yadav. Monica, I've been asking them their introduction to K-pop. And Monica is a senior entertainment journalist with Bollywood Hungama. So Monica, which was the first song or artist you had heard?
Hi, everyone. I can't, so I had also mentioned this in one of the pieces that I had written last year. I think it started around the first artist that I had come across was Girls' Generation, and slowly it panned to basically Shiny. So that's how I came across. And around that time, React music channels were kind of booming, and they were kind of interested in like what's happening in K-pop, or these music videos are absolutely amazing. And that's how I came across Girls' Generation, because a lot of people were talking about their videos were going viral at the time. And I think I had heard it from a friend or someone like that. And around that time, nobody around me was talking. And that's how I was like, maybe I'll get into it, or I'll talk about it, and I'll just see what's happening. But I think actually, if I got into something basically like in music, I think it was BTS. BTS is what I got into completely, like Korean music. And I the first introduction to them was, for me, the album that I had completely from top to bottom that I had listened was Dark and Wild. And I think that kind of changed. I don't know how many people's life changed because of Cypher Part 3, but mine did.
Awesome. Also, now this is to you, all three of you. Now, as a journalist in an article had said, and a quoter, K-pop has the ability to earworm its way into your brain. So what's that X factor, Riddhi and Monica and Nikki, that makes it such a global phenomenon? I know it's not just about those high quality performances, the visuals and the synchronized choreography that we see. There's nothing that these artists can't do. But what do you think is the X factor? Riddhi, I'll start with you.
Well, personally for me, what really stood out was the K-pop stars' commitment to the industry, which I think was really, really cool. More than even just the music. The music is outstanding, of course, but like the genres are R&B, pop, and hip hop, which is what is available in the rest of the world as well. But for me, what was the X factor was the interaction with them. Like you really feel that you are heard. I've been part of fandom culture since I was 11 years old. Different bands, like this has been part of my life since I was a kid. And there is something so different about the space of K-pop, which is so welcoming and so much more, I would say, like a community, which is quite powerful. So it was that sort of feeling with the idol, like a connection that had me stay, that really intrigued me, because it really felt like they're just as committed to you as you are to them. And I didn't really feel the same sort of connection with other artists. And even like at the rate at which they drop music, like they're always churning something out, which is pretty amazing at the rate at which they release stuff. And even their discipline and of course attention to detail, the performance, the lyrics, I just felt there was something over there that was just doing better than what other artists were doing for me around the world. I can't exactly put into words what it is. It's more like a feeling, like it just felt right.
Mm-hmm. Nikki, what about you?
I like what Riddhi said. For me also, it was more of a fan thing towards the end. But I think for me in the beginning, because I started this way early, just when K-pop started to market out of Korea, and as we all know, the fandom culture and everything just started with the rise of social media. But imagine this in like 2001, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, that's like not much of, YouTube is not even as active as it is now. There's no Twitter, all of that. So for me, it was more like, personally speaking, it was more like, I don't know, I may hit some chords here when I say this, but it was something like, you see someone, you feel like connected kind of a thing. You see, like, because when I watch a Bollywood movie, I cannot, you understand what I'm trying to say, right? When I'm listening to a Bollywood music or I'm watching a Bollywood movie, I don't see representation. I don't see, my kind of things, So for me, it was more like, okay, yeah, they look similar. It was more like that. And then obviously it was because of, the music that they made, the topics that they spoke about, they sang about. Perhaps Indian movies or Indian songs, or maybe they were also doing it, but because, as I said, I was exposed to this first, so for me it was more like, okay, they're singing about things that normally people don't talk about much, talking about topics which are not really spoken about. So for me, it was more of that, and I think I sort of connected with that. And over the years, obviously, when the fandom culture came about, when international fandom culture, I would say, because obviously since it is home ground for them, they were always good with their fans. But when the whole international fandom culture came about, it was really nice to see how they would be very, active towards the fans, and were very nice and interactive wise. So I think, yeah, so that was.
Yeah. Nikki, what about Monica? What about you?
I don't know what attracted me. I would say, first and foremost, I have been part of a lot of, I grew up watching a lot of Bollywood movies. I am anyway, 90% of the time, my reporting is about Bollywood in general right now as well. So when I started growing up, and films, music are something that's very core of my family in general. So we basically grew up listening to music, classical, whatever we call it about in general, Bollywood or Hindi or like Punjabi music. And that's how it started to grow. Then you start to realize that Western music is doing well. So you start listening to them in school. And that's how you start growing part of the fandom. I can't even say that I've been a fan. I've been a fan of everything. I've been a fan of shows. I've been a fan of everything. But what attracted me, I would say I was very attracted to the fact that the music videos, first and foremost, absolutely bang on. I've never seen that ever in my life. So you kind of understand that artistically they are doing so much more. They're creating a universe that nobody can do it. They're leaving Easter eggs in their music videos. You kind of find that kind of is the mystery. You sort of get into it, and a lot of it is basically in general. I feel dark and wild kind of. I can't say much, but I do think that album completely changed the way I started to think in general. And after a couple of years, I think I was a very closeted fan. 2-3 years when I started to get into K-pop in general, because nobody was talking, and I think it was kind of looked down upon around me. It's like, the faces that people would make the moment I would say K-pop, and I kind of never understood. But y'all have been listening to Latin music or certain music in a while, and y'all were dancing to Gangnam Style for the longest time without even knowing that Psy is from South Korea.
Absolutely.
So over the years, then I found this Twitter stan culture. That is where I started to realize that people openly talk about it, and I think there's no shame in it. It's just people want to shame you because you like something and you find joy in it. But when I started to, I feel a lot of early music videos that I saw, be it Girls' Generation or Shiny's Lucifer or BTS's any music video early on, No More Dream or anything, I think that particularly attracted me because there's this what do you call it, attraction in general is towards the fact that there's so much excitement that you watch and you learn from it.
Absolutely.
I've never seen a music video in the West that I felt like, wow, I have to watch about. I've never felt that kind of feeling. I've never had. And I think that is where I started to like get into it. And I think everyone at this point is like very much like you find solace in these guys and these fans. And these are the kind of people you talk to in general. And I feel that's the best way to be.
Absolutely. I agree with that. Now, Riddhi, I'm going to ask you this. It was also, I've been reading the articles that Monica, you have been writing. I follow also the website that Nikki is part of. You had said that it's not just about making, one of the quotes in the articles was where you were one of the voices, said it's not just about the making of the song, it's also the making of the performer which counts. Also, the kind of their lyrics, now you have the boy bands, they talk about teen issues, they talk about mental health. The girls have been talking about more self-aware topics. So as people who have interacted with these artists on a one-on-one level, which is that one thing that struck you?
I think a lot of people have a misconception about K-pop artists, that they're empty or, that they're totally manufactured or fake in some way or the other. But like over the past few years where I have been talking to artists in the K-pop industry, they're vibrant, intelligent young people, and every interaction has been just absolutely lovely because especially a lot of the artists I've spoken to, many of them have been very involved in their own songwriting, like whether it's BTS or whether it's Tomorrow by Together who are just beginning that journey, or whether, I don't know, like Alexa, like it doesn't matter who it is. Most of the artists I've spoken to have been very involved in their own work. And it's pretty amazing to be able to then, connect with them, because I'm around the same age as a lot of these artists, like especially BTS and their peers, like EXO and all these guys. So it was very real. Like I really did not feel a sense of like, oh, I need to be nervous around them, or like, they won't know what they're talking about. Like a lot of people, in fact, have asked me, oh, so like when you ask K-pop star a question, is it blank because they don't make their own music? Like, do they not say anything? And I was like, why does this conversation exist? Why am I asked these questions about K-pop artists and not about, let's say, if I'm talking to Maluma, like what is the difference there? That's something that's pretty, but they're just as, they're people just like us. And the fact that they're incorporating so many of the stuff that, that they're going through, whether it is BTS's incredible, like commitment to talking about mental health, or whether it's talking about politics, like a lot of other artists have done, or like the women in K-pop talking about being self-sufficient, being strong, being independent. This is the kind of stuff that I look for when I am, looking for artists to fall in love with, because that's the kind of belief that I have in and apply in my life. These are really important core values to me. And in fact, I'm getting that a lot more, like Monica said, right? Like I'm getting that a lot more from within the K-pop industry and with really wholesome, powerful interactions with these artists. So I think, I think that's why talking to them has been an absolute pleasure. Like it's like one of my greatest achievements of my career as a journalist, like not just a K-pop journalist, but like out of so many artists I've interviewed, the K-pop interviews have been so special, for sure.
Awesome. Monica, what do you have to say?
Interactions in general, what exactly was the question? Sorry, I got very engrossed.
I know. Basically, what struck you when you've interacted with these artists? Because, they do, it's not about just the music, it's also about the person.
I'm going to talk about a very recent interaction that I had with Ace. This was after the online concert they had last month. And this was around after the schedule was done. And this is around 9 p.m. or something. And they are about to go home or something, but they had a couple of things to do. And this is something I realized at 9 p.m. after a very hectic schedule. They were so vibrant on that Zoom call. I felt it. I'm like, I apologized to them in the sense like, I did not want you to stay back. And they said, we love talking to people. We love talking about our music. And I kind of felt that it's not fake. You cannot fake that. They get into the system. They want to make music. They want to showcase their talents. And you can't fake that kind of thing. People say it's a very factory-based. How can you say that? Because of the fact that these guys want to become musicians. Nobody's forcing them to do that. And secondly, if they are staying back to just nurture their talent on a day where they don't have to, that just means that they just love what they do. And that is also because their fans also love what they do. And that is the support they get. And I think that kind of change, I have had interactions with many artists in general, but there are a couple of them I have really I've not spoken to a lot of big artists yet because of the fact that opportunities are very less in India as of now still. And I do tell them that even if Rolling Stone India can have that kind of problems where they are facing, where they are not biggest artists, would take a while to give them an interview. I have still a very niche name, Bollywood Hungama, right? So that is one of the reasons. But whoever I've spoken to, I recently spoke to Alexa, I recently spoke to many of the artists, and I felt the fact that even after a hectic schedule, they are so cheerful, not because they are on camera, because they are on camera all the time. You can't fake that. And I'm very interested. Every time I've spoken to an artist, I felt like I have learned something more. And these are some of the youngest guys. They're younger than me. And I've learned more about life from them, I feel, every time. There's this solo artist called Neve, and every time he was talking about music that day, I was speaking to him, and I felt he was speaking about in general mental health and how he channeled that trauma, that kind of trauma and that kind of feeling in his music, in his debut album, and that's what he said. And I felt that day, I was like, come on, man, he's been writing this for so long. You can't fake that, no matter what it is. It's just an outside perception, because there's this thing, because most of the Western artists take a while to release an album, and that means that's authentic, while they do 2 comebacks a year, and that's not authentic. So because they do that, but they don't realize that for the two comebacks that they do, they have prepared for years toward that. They prepare.
Absolutely.
They prepare well. That's the only thing.
Sure.
I feel every interaction that I've had, it's probably changed the way I think now about how they do in the music system or what they do. I feel every time I've learned something, and I've grown from that. And I try to make sure that the next interview I'll do much better. And I always like to read people's interviews for a reason, because what are they talking about to them? Maybe I can something learn from that, and how they are pursuing this kind of interview with them. And every time I see that I always hype articles and interviews for this reason, because some of the interviews I read are absolutely incredible. I always feel I'm somehow a level lower and I have to learn more.
No, I totally get that. I learned a lot from Riddhi and your article and talking
Monica,
to Nikki.
please. Okay, Miss phenomenal Monica is. Like, she's one of the most hardworking people. Like, I have seen how, like, from the beginning, right, when she started, it's such a fight. Like, I remember, because you're writing with Bollywood Hungama, right? You wouldn't expect K-pop to come from Bollywood Hungama, and she fought for it and she did it, which I think is like supremely badass. So
Absolutely. And Nikki, I want to ask you, as a company, you pioneered the K-pop concert culture in India. What do you think are the challenges of hosting these concerts? Do you think there's a difference in things from the time you first started and now?
Yeah, I think when it comes even like just in concert in general, but then like even in, not just in concert, but just in otherwise as well. I'm sure Riddhi and Monica would also like see that. I'm sorry, there's like a light issue. I can see that like when you first started it, I'm sure it was difficult, right, to get in touch with artists and all, and gradually it might not be as good as how you would want it to be, but it got better. So even with us, it was just like that. When it started beginning, we were like thinking, okay, we started this in 2015 January. It was a time where I was still doing my bachelor's in law. I was still in law school. I was in my 4th year of law school, and I was like, there's nothing's happening. We have to try something. We have to figure something out, and we just took a leap of faith and we just started it. And then from that time onwards, we have been trying to speak with a lot of companies. We tried doing a lot of things. And it was just like, in the beginning, it would always be, trying to convince them, hey, there is a market, or there will be a market, because there was nothing to show, no figures to show, right? So it would be like, okay, we can do this. Why don't you try it with us? Obviously, they would ask us like exorbitant amount of money in dollars. And that would be like a very big setback, but we would always be like, okay, let's just try it. Gradually over the years, after we started doing more and more concerts, more and more events, small events, big events, started adding people to the list, it sort of became slightly easier. Because now we had numbers to ballpark it. We would be like, okay, we wanted this many numbers, and this is how we came out. We achieved this number, we wanted this number, and we achieved the number that we wanted. It was sort of like that. And for us, especially, I would say that over the years, it kept growing. For us, it was a very strategic thing that we did, probably because it was 4 of us coming together, trying something which was never done in India, and it was just something that we took a leap of faith in. It was something where we were simultaneously juggling with our education, with our work and everything, and we were putting in all our own money, no sponsors at all. So we were just putting out all our money in it. So it started off with that, and I think like right now it's become sort of easier to connect with people in terms of events and stuff. But of course, there are also certain companies who just wouldn't want to come to India. And I would say, I don't know. I don't know whether I should be saying this or not, but all those people who says, I want to come to India, call me. It's not true, man.
Let's ask Riddhi and Monica, since they have been
It's just
speaking to
Hawa
them.
mein. Some of them are just saying.
Riddhi
Sorry.
and
I
Monica,
was like,
what are the plans of getting BTS here, yeah?
it's a very dicey situation. I would exclude BTS from this narrative, actually. I feel like BTS, they have really been working very hard to try and connect with India.
Yes.
That's like one group I can sort of like exclude from this narrative.
Yes, they're definitely
But like
interested in
Nikki was
India.
saying, yeah, they are. Hybe is very interested in India, which is
very,
really,
very
really cool. I mean, you can tell, right, by the media
Yeah.
interactions, they have just like
Yeah.
in 2020, I think like when I had the conversation with them about Dynamite's success, they were like super shocked, but also like, oh damn, like okay, so that's something we can do, And then they just like went into overdrive with an Indian PR campaign. Basically, they have an Indian PR company working for them and everything, which is really cool. So Hybe, I'm going to leave out of this, but like Nikki was saying, there are a lot of companies, and it's not necessarily the fault of the artist here, which is like most of the time, like I'm sure you guys have experienced this, where like even if it's like trying to get an interview or trying to pitch India as like a very powerful audience, they just don't believe it, and they kind of like dismiss you. It's a little bit difficult to sort of like, I mean, even get an email back sometimes, because like I've specifically with Rolling Stone, it's like the Rolling Stone is not enough. You add the India and you're like down in their eyes, like I know this because my colleagues at Rolling Stone or at other publications that are in the West or publications that let's say have lesser following than us, but are Western, will score interviews which will be denied to us. And Monica has 100% had experience with this. I've had experience, like most of our Indian journalist friends. Yeah, like all of us, we have sort of like seen this, where that your foreign peers are getting a lot of opportunities that you're not getting because the companies just don't believe in India enough. There are, of course, exceptions, like I said, but
and then
it's a fight. It's really a fight.
And then it's more like, sometimes some companies very blatantly tell you, India is not in our marketing, one of the marketing
now that I think it's all changing.
We
Don't
keep
you think
hearing
it's all
things like
changing
that
now?
because when we also interview for Namaste Hailu, so we get to hear that like we are not interested in Indian market right now, and it's really sometimes, I'm sure Riddhi and Monica has also faced this with US market, because obviously you are more interested in US market, obviously. With US market, even if it's a very small website or very small YouTube channel with maybe like 1,000 subscribers or something, also they would just get it. Like, you're a US person and you sort of have a little bit of name or to it, then you would just get it. But with
ladies, tell me, I mean, Geo Sawan has said that K-pop clocking 9.5 million streams between January to March 2021. Is no one seeing these numbers?
I have personally sent numbers to K-pop companies. I mean, I have compiled data, I have done my research, and I have had meetings in Korea, like, or here via Zoom with so many companies, like not the artists, just the people behind the scenes, right? And it is like, again, for them, such a shock. I don't know if they monitor it or not. I really don't think they do. Because I remember like in 2019, I had an amazing meeting with AOMG. They're fantastic, by the way. And at the time when I met up with like the people at AOMG and we talked about India as a market, Spotify had like just entered India. And then I was like, why don't you check out Spotify statistics? Like they didn't think that India would be a market. Like it just didn't occur to them. It was just as innocent as that, And when we actually, it was really cool. We opened up like the AOMG artist Spotify backend, what they see, right? And I was like, keep scrolling. And even though Spotify has been in India for like 3 months at this point, like I can assure you, we are higher ranking in terms of streaming. And it was true. We were in the top 20 of streaming of that artist within just 3 months of Spotify being in India. Wow. It's insane. And they were also like, oh, damn, like we didn't even think about this, and then they were like, okay, like we want to learn more, we want to know more about the scene there. So it's a mix of I would say like innocent like ignorance where they don't know. They really have no idea what the audience is like over here. And it's also, I would say, there is a little bit of racism where India is concerned. Like, they just don't think that we are, I don't know, people who listen to K-pop maybe, or who consume, maybe they think we're just wrapped up in Bollywood or the other movie industries all the time. So maybe they just don't consider it at all. Like, oh, like India, like who there will care? They love their own music and film industry, So
That's all
it's like
changing.
it is changing, but like it will take some more time, I feel, for like, more of the bigger, and these are big companies that I'm sure Nikki also would know this, Monica would know this. It's like the bigger companies that are like this. It's the smaller companies are more willing to listen because they're like curious, they might actually give you a better chance. But bigger labels, it will take a little time to convince them, I think, like just a bit more.
And asking the three of you, where do you see it going from here? Because, I think everybody's playlist, including mine, just has singles by, Korean pop stars. Where do you see this going? Where this momentum, this fandom going? Where do you see it?
I actually have a, sort of a little slightly different thing that I always think in my mind. With how everyone keeps saying that the pandemic has just brought K-pop and K-drama in India in the map and all of that thing. For me, I just feel like, okay, yeah, of course, the pandemic pushed it, it made numbers count, maybe like more people came to know about it and all of that. But I feel like this has always been there in India. It just didn't catch the eye of the mainstream media. And earlier it was just, Riddhi was one of the few reporters that was, Riddhi was probably like, for mainstream India would be like one of the first ones to write about it. Monica started writing it probably around 2018, 2019, if I'm not wrong. I'm sorry if my numbers are wrong. And you were also writing about, you were taking interviews for NDTV as well, right? With some actors and stuff. But we wouldn't see much of K-pop or K-drama in mainstream media, but now we're seeing it. And so suddenly everyone's like, okay, it's such a big thing, but the market was always there. It was always present. It was always visible. And I would say personally, from my perspective, I'm sure everyone here would agree that 2019 was a very, very good year for K-pop in India. We had such big concerts. I would say big in terms of Indian market. We had so many different artists. We had multiple tours, in that same year itself. And that year itself, we were approached by, so all these concerts that we have done till now, we have done it with zero sponsorship. Everything has just gone out from our pockets and we have just been using our own money for that. But after the tours happened, after everything happened, for the first time, we were approached by very big companies who were very interested in K-pop. So this interest in K-pop by the companies has already existed in 2019. And so 2020 was supposed to be a very good year, the big 3 year, I would say. Unfortunately, the pandemic.
Nikki, there's already a request to host a K-pop concert in South India. They have a huge crowd waiting.
Yeah. So I would say that whether the pandemic takes after the pandemic, whether the crowd, the new crowd that exists, whether it continues to exist or whether it just continues to fade out, I feel like it would just go bigger. I wouldn't say that it would fade away or something. I would say that it's just going to keep happening like how it existed way before. Like that's just my personal opinion, but I just feel like that, now with the media, I feel like every random website that I see or every random magazine that suddenly is talking about K-pop, and I'm like, wait, I'm never picking up this, this particular thing for K-pop. And so that's the impact, and that's great. That's a great impact.
Rolling Stones and Bollywood Hungama now for K-pop information. And I must say, Halyu, but Riddhi and Monica, asking you the same question I asked, and I'm also going to put in another question for the two of you is, what do you think Indian industry could learn from the Koreans? Because you have a lot of singers like Rain, Daebak, who've also become talent managers. So the fandom plus this to the two ladies.
Monica, you want to go first? Because I feel like I just talk a lot.
It's okay. What can they learn? I feel our industry in independent music has been doing well for the last couple of years. It's been so good. It's just that I feel there's not enough media coverage apart from the certain sections that do. Like if you see certain websites that do cover independent music. Apart from that, you won't see that happening much in India, even though they do send their PR releases. It's just that it's not gonna get hits according to the editors or in general, right? uh, the industry has been doing it. If you see Divine, he has his own label. If you see many artists, they have people. They are training people under them. They maybe not have made the labels yet, but they are training people in general. They work with a lot of people, and they bring in new talent with them. If you see, the support is more. So it's not like our industry is not, but it's like I feel it's not managed enough. It's in parts. I feel there are certain sections that do really well and their music starts booming. Like just see the Punjabi industry. If you see independent music from that side has been doing well for the longest time. And I'm not talking about the Punjabi music that is in Bollywood. That is not the act. Just see Diljit Dosanjh just released an album like 2 days ago. 3 days ago, and it's doing really well on Apple Music and in general Spotify as well. And it's not that he doesn't even promote so much. It's just that his Twitter and Instagram is the promotional tool for him. People are doing well. It's just in parts and parts, and there's no proper system in general as of now to help the artist to push. If you see South industry, A.R. Rahman is pushing a lot of young artists in his company. There are a lot of people doing it. It's just that there's no, unless it becomes a mainstream thing, that means Mumbai centric thing, or someone from the biggest name from the industry starts pushing. Just see, Ranveer Singh has started the inking labels, and now they have a lot of artists under them. And some of the artists that you had seen in Gully Boy now are under that label. So it's been a great push for some of those things. And that man, what he does is the moment that his artist or those artists have released album, he's going to go live, and that day he's going to play that song for the longest time. So
that's very J-Park, by the way. That's like the exact same way J-Park is with his artists.
Exactly.
Like even with JB's album launch just yesterday, they did like a live stream and stuff. You have the CEO of the company, whether it's Ranveer or whether it is J-Park. I think that's a really cool parallel. I just thought about it and I was like, damn, like it's already happening. It's happening in the country.
That's true. And heavily our industry is dominated by a lot of, what do you call it? We don't even give our artists in general so much, unless and until it becomes a big song. We don't push them so much. So that's one of the reasons. I feel in Korean industry in general, whoever has labels under them, if it's an artist, Rain has a label, J-Park has a label, he has Higher and AOMG. And apart from that, there's so many people who are pushing for labels or starting their own labels. I feel they push their artists really well, no matter what. Just see P Nation. I feel P Nation is doing really well with pushing their artists. They have so many solo artists and right now, and I think what he does is he's doing it so well. The funny memes that he puts out, or promotions, or Sai, what he does, I feel it's a best way to reach out to the audience that kind of is into the stan culture, and it's funny, maybe I should check or something like that. I feel our industry is doing well. It's just that we are not covering enough, and I think it's going to take, unless and until it's a music space website, not much coverage you'll see in mainstream media. Mainstream media is mostly about what editors want, and SEO is more important than, I think, an article that's going to bring you numbers rather than the quality of the content. Maybe I
agree. And K-pop anyways SEO friendly now on top.
I think that's something. Oh, I'm sorry. You were saying.
No, go on. Carry on.
No, like as soon as Monica mentioned about the SEO thing, it's something like Rolling Stone India, you could say, struggles with, in the sense, because we cover the artists no one else has been covering all these years. So for us, it's not the numbers game. For us, it's like, someone needs to talk to these incredible musicians, because like Monica said, there's like a massive dearth of media coverage of artists who are independent. Another major point, like to add to what Monica was saying, is like the audience, I think, is not committing enough to the Indian artists. because the dedication that we see with the K-pop fandom and stuff, like the fandom culture as such, is still not a thing that really exists in India. You know, like the whole like, oh, it's still in its infancy. It's starting with a lot of like fans who were, maybe fans of One Direction, now they're fans of K-pop and stuff. It's like a slow tide that's coming over. But mainstream India does not have fandom culture that exists from household to household, whereas like in many other countries, like especially within Korea itself, fandom culture is like a very normal part of being young. So I think like that's a reason why like our artists, this whole thing of like this is my fandom, it's something the Bollywood stars usually have, or like stars from or the other film industries, right? But it's not something like, let's say, Divine would have. It's not a culture that is cultivated. Like, although the music is absolutely fantastic, there is a bit of a missing link which is not able to connect the artists to the audience. And I think a lot of that unfortunately comes from the audience's, like, I think, reluctance to sort of like embrace the pop space, because it's like over as we've been growing up, like the film industries have all been the main source of entertainment, the main thing that the media reports on. It's just constantly in your face. So a lot of the time, new fans are not even aware of new artists, or maybe they'll hear about them once and then forget about them. It's not reinforced in modern media. So I think like it's a really fascinating thing that's happening with artists like Arman Malik, where the fandom culture is like, sort of being cultivated and now onto an international level. Like these are the like our pop stars, right, who are on the rise, and that fandom, like he's got Armanians, right, happening.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, and we've had a couple of like other artists before him as well who sort of like had the ball going with like Sanam, right? Even they had like somewhat of a similar effect in India, but it's still like what, like a handful of artists, right? So we are still also again in the very early stages of fandom culture exploding. So I wouldn't say it's that much about the labels in India and the artists learning from the K-pop stars. I would say it's more about like the audience sort of learning to accept artists outside of the film industry, and the media who has to also maybe try and cover more of the Indian artists. Like I feel like hip hop wasn't really being given that much attention until Gully Boy came in, and then it just exploded, and now it's like people are saying it's overrated. You know what I mean? So it's like,
exactly. And Riddhi, what you've said has been echoed by Arya, who said that our industry is heavily dominated by actors and actresses. The artist is left behind in the shadows.
Absolutely. So now when you have artists like, I know, like, Arijit, Shreya Ghoshal, they're all like also releasing independent music. But for some reason, like because you're so also attached to the face that you see on the screen and not the, background voice, for some reason, it's just not the same sort of fandom thing that happens with the artists in the K-pop industry. I find it really fascinating. I feel like it really might change, like I mentioned, like with Arman and the new pop stars who are like on the rise, especially like Monica mentioned with like artists like Mr. Rahman who are backing new young musicians with their labels, and that culture of like a slick music video marketing, like the entire campaign, the album, this, that, this, that, this, that. I think like that's finally being implemented by someone as massive as Mr. Rahman. So I think like it's beginning, it's starting, but it will take us that some time before we can build that same amount of like traction that K-pop has.
True, and the way the South Korean cultural ministry has been promoting them as socio-cultural ambassadors. I mean, that's something we can also learn. But just talking about that, also, do you think through K-pop, you're also going to, this is the three of you, discover the underground music, the independent artists going forward, or do you think it's going to be restricted to just the groups and the bands, boy bands and girl bands?
I'll go, because for me, K-pop led me to all the underground artists, and I just, for me at least, I felt it's inevitable. I think it's going to happen. I mean, unless you are a kind of person who's like, no, I only have time to commit to like one artist or two right now. I can't handle too much. All right, like that's like, okay, fine. Like you're not able to, right, take on that many. Maybe you're like, you prefer that particular kind of music. But if you do have an open mind, I feel like eventually it leads down these paths. Because like, suppose you're a fan of GOT7, for example, I think this is really cool. Now all of the members are part of like these R&B hip hop labels, so many of them, right? They also all have collaborated with so many artists in the R&B and Korean hip hop industry. And I mean, the members are part of the K hip hop industry more now, I would say, actually. So eventually, through collabs, through discovering more about the history of even where the K-pop artists have come from, like if you are looking at Block B and their history with Zico, he was underground. I mean, RM and Sugar underground. Like if you're looking at like, and they all knew each other, which is really cool. Like especially RM and Zico. So if it's like something that you're exploring about the history of your K-pop groups, chances are they have also been sort of involved, and it will lead to the growth of the underground music industry in Korea.
Yeah. Nikki, what do you have to say?
I agree with that. I feel like, it's just, you start off with one and you don't just get stuck at one. It's because of the collaborations or maybe the friendship or the mentions, or someone is listening to some music and then you just sort of dive into different forms of music. For me specifically, although of course I started off with K-pop, I've also been listening to different forms of Korean music and I've always enjoyed it. I know for a fact that there are many people around me who also do the same. I think it just gradually happens, It's not just with K-pop. Say, for example, you start with K-drama as well. You listen to the OSTs and then you're like, okay, who sang this OST? Or who is this actor? Probably they might be an idol actor, or probably the OST has been sung by an idol group. And then it just goes like that. And then it's just a circle that you keep, entering. It's like a maze. You go one way and then you try to come another way and you find another. So I feel like it just happens. And like Riddhi was saying, it's not just K-pop, it's just different other forms of music that has been coming up a lot, whether it's K R&B, K bands, or even K hip hop. A lot of music has been doing really, really well. So yeah, I think it's not just K-pop. Maybe for now, maybe people are thinking it's just K-pop because of how the craze is. But on the back end, or there are even otherwise, even in numbers, K hip hop is doing really, really well. K R&B is doing really, really well. So I think all forms of music are coming out and it's just been doing amazing.
Yeah. Monica, do you want to add something to it?
They basically said it, and I feel it's in general, you commit to one group or something like that because at the end of the day, you have very limited time to yourself. So you kind of want to watch their content or listen to their content. Eventually, I started finding a lot of solo artists because of the Korean drama OSTs. And that's how I started to discover a lot of solo artists.
Likewise.
I was very surprised that most of them I had not known because most of them are never showing. They're not doing like extreme kind of promotions because they don't have to. That the OST works and suddenly you start to find about their past music and then what they're coming up with, and that's what happens. And that's how I came across a lot of OSTs that I've come across. I recently I think after Blue and Grey that BTS's Taehyung had with B album he had released. That's how I got to know about Need, and he was mentioned in the album. So I in the song. So I kind of understood like who is it? Who is this guy? I've never tried to go around and check. Then I got to know that he had worked with EXO Chen. So I slowly I started to notice. Then I started to see what producing he has done, and then he released an album. Slowly I kind of got to know, and I think that is how you discover music. It's always been it's a pattern. Like you try to find one person, and somehow you end up with 10 people in general.
Totally.
I've always found those kind of stuff, and I feel music just makes me feel good in a day, and it's even if it's a one group that I love or like 10 people that I listen to, it doesn't matter as long as it makes me feel good and the content is absolutely amazing. Why not?
I agree with you.
You're listening to music for healing, and I'm going to tell this something because of the fact that a couple of years ago my father had fallen completely ill and it was so bad. Over the years music helped him heal, and today he's doing really well. And it kind of I don't know what it is, but I think it's in it's music. It's music in general, and it can just completely change your day and life in general. So I kind of feel like anything anything that you
I,
find good and makes you feel better, I feel that's a good music for you, I guess.
I second that. I have the Record of You soundtrack on loop because it kind of calms me down. But before we wrap up, I'm going to ask you girls one question. These performers are amazing. I know, there's raw talent that's scouted. There's training that they undergo, singing, dancing, how to behave in the public. I sometimes wonder, is there something that they can't do? It just seems like a complete perfect package. And you are the ones who've interacted with them. I mean, there is no chink in their armor. I mean, literally.
Dicey topic, I feel, because yeah, because that's what, to be very frank, it's what the entire industry wants you to think, that there is no chink, right? But in the long run, I feel it is. Now, we're not getting into the whole dark side of K-pop thing. Let's
No,
not do that.
not at all, not at all.
Yeah, this is something that I feel, as human beings, artists across the globe, they are not invincible. Like, whether it is Lady Gaga or G-Dragon, like, it does not matter. Like, who you are, artists are human beings, and there of course will be, like, a lot of challenges that they're facing. It's just that maybe the K-pop industry is a little bit better at hiding it. And there's, of course, I think, something that's cultivated by the industry itself, like where the companies have cultivated the PR, the marketing around all of it, is the idea of the idol. The idol is like a model, like a role model, So that whole idea of it is, I think, like, why they come across as like, like, no chinks in my armor. I'm just going to do my best to present myself as someone who is, like, as outstanding in everything as possible. And from all the conversations I've had with so many artists, it is super difficult for them to be like this all the time. To be like, I think, like, I think, Monica, you were saying, like, there are always cameras on them, right? There are always cameras on them. And even when they aren't, they're so careful, polite, they're so sweet. And they're, like, constantly working to deliver that idea of the idol. And a lot of the time, people
Very
forget
well
these
said.
are real human beings behind that whole
Very
thing.
well said, Riddhi. Very well said. Yeah, true. Nikki,
Yeah.
Monica, do you want to add to what she
Yeah,
said?
I think, like Riddhi was saying, they're all humans in the end, So they have this persona. I'm not saying that everyone is, doing that thing because they're supposed to do like that. There are some who are genuinely perfect. They're genuinely, because, but then there are some, where you have this thing that you have to be, where you're supposed to portray idol image, the perfect image, where it's obviously not possible to do all the time because you are all human in the end. So off camera, it becomes a little difficult, the mask wears off a little bit for some. For some, it's always there. It's all about where you're standing, to be honest, where you're looking at it from. Are you looking at it from the fan angle? Then okay, that's perfect, rosy, everything. Are you looking at from an angle where you're just interviewing them? Yeah, they're bearing everything, okay, fun. But even then, even during interviews, I'm sure Riddhi and Monica has had personal experience as well, where some are not as active as how others are, right? Like,
Yeah, that's very true.
yeah,
Like, I've
that's very
had,
true, because they're humans in
it's,
the end. Maybe it was a tiring day, or
yeah,
maybe it was,
people have been rude, people have cried, and we have been told, yeah, like, and generally because they're under so much pressure.
yeah.
And like, as press, because of the idol industry, I can't just write that and then, like, he or she burst into tears. Like, usually Rolling Stone will sort of, like, write about that, but a lot of the time it's like their management will be like, no, please, like, don't say,
Take it
so
off.
shake it off, like the idol, like, like, just like, please don't, like, reveal that about it. So there have been instances where there have been such emotional, like, interviews and releases, and sometimes I'm not able to show that. I'm sure Monica's had, like, similar experiences. Nikki has probably seen, like, a lot of stuff behind the scenes because she's worked in the concert sort of capability, right? Like, with the K-pop stars, like, she's, like, way more in contact with them throughout a scheduled day, which is, like, really hectic even for her team. I'm sure, like, it's like a lot. Like, we've done shoots with K-pop stars, like, where we spent the whole day with them, and it is tough for everybody, like their crew, our crew, us, them. And I'm sure Nikki can, like, definitely that. So I feel like there's just so much we don't know. There's so much we don't know.
Absolutely.
I think
Monica,
in the
anything
end, we have to just
Sorry.
remember that they're also humans and then look at it in that perspective. And yeah, I think that was just
True.
To be honest, since I've been doing 6 years in this company, and I have seen a lot of Indian artists and Bollywood stars in general, and I've met them a couple of times. Camera is shut, the vibe is completely different. But I feel that's okay, because they don't have to be on point all the time, because so just because they are on camera, they are on big screen, that does not mean they have to be constantly. Ranveer Singh doesn't have to be like at the end of, like, he can have a bad day, right? He can have a bad day. I don't care. He can have a bad day. And same goes for anybody. But there's this, over the years, there's this ideal perception that they have to be, but they are young boys and girls, right? They grew up in the, and it's okay. It's okay. Unless or until it's completely a very, very controversial topic that you cannot talk about, or that is something that they are. But apart from that, the things they have, or other days they have a bad day, it's okay. And some days, if on a day when you can understand, they do. So here's the thing, they do so much live broadcasting through live channels and all. It's very you can understand that the person is very genuine in general. First day you can fake it, second day you can fake it, 2 years later, how can you do that? You cannot be doing that. And because at the end of the, they are showing their art, and it's not easy to have that kind of mask on for a lot of people. I feel that's what I have seen. It's because I feel it's very difficult to have that image with in general. Just a second. I
All
forgot.
right. That's okay. Okay. Monica, she's on. Yeah, she's here.
Oh, I'm so sorry. My voice went. So yeah, I feel what Riddhi said was absolutely correct. But I don't think, to be very honest, I'm a fan of person. If they have a bad day, it's okay. They can take a break and they can come back whenever they want. The fandom is always there supporting them. And
True.
if it's completely a very controversial thing, then it's something that they deal with, that their teams deal with. So it's not something I have to say everything or something like that. That we talk within our
True.
friends and all, right? Apart
True.
from
That's
that,
what.
as a journalist, I feel, because having seen a lot of artists behind the cameras as well, and the kind of schedules they have in general, some of them have 20 interviews a day or 30 interviews a day.
It's yeah.
The first interview has gone absolutely amazing, but the 20th interview, your energy will come down.
Absolutely.
And that's okay. And I feel
Absolutely.
some of the days, we don't have good days all the time. I can't expect them to have.
I totally agree. As Arya said, it's about the art and not so much the artist. And the last question to all three of you, I want to know of your fangirl moment. I'm yet to have mine.
No, wait, before we begin, what would be yours? Like, which is the artist that would like awake your fangirl moment?
Let me just announce it to the world. Song Joong Ki. I'm just manifesting it. I was envious of Monica today. I was like, Song Joong Ki.
We pray for you.
Lee Byung-hun, Song Joong Ki, Hyun Bin. Done. 3 names.
And it'll happen for sure. Yeah.
Tell me your fangirl moment, ladies.
For me, never in front of the artist. I am very strict about like, do not freak out in front of them, because I don't want to be that person who then like, where they're like also like, okay, like this girl is weird. Like that's happened where, very early on in my career, I have freaked out like in front of other artists, not K-pop artists. Not freaked out, but just been like visibly nervous talking to them. And they kind of shut down a little bit. So I have made it like my habit now, like very strict, like don't show them, like freak out on the inside. But I was, of course, BTS, like when I was talking to RM, I oh my God, like I couldn't like function correctly. And it was very lucky that he is just lovely to talk to. Like he broke the ice and was very calm. So then after a point, I kind of forgot who I'm talking to exactly. You know what I mean? Like it just felt like some guy around my age. Like we're just talking about music. So it was because of how lovely he is as a person. Also, I think when I met Tiger JK, my brain again had like a short circuit. Like that was pretty crazy. Tableau, Tiger JK, more of the legendary figures in K-pop and hip hop. I'm still waiting for the number one fangirl moment that will destroy me. Monica knows this very well. G-Dragon. He is my
We shall
ultimate bias.
manifest it for you.
Yeah, thank you. The man who like pushed me onto this journey back in 2012. So I'm still waiting for that interview, and I will probably cry on the inside. But I feel like yeah, that's gonna be the big one.
Nikki, get him to India.
Nikki, please.
I am manifesting it because I'm not sure. I mean, I just have one bias in K-pop, and that's G-Dragon. My dream is to see Big Bang in India, and I will be on the front, the front row, first bench. That's how I keep saying, because I think for me, I would say I haven't had a fangirl moment because I have been working with them already, and I'm very professional when it comes to working. So I don't really bother much. Like, when we work with artists also, we'll hardly have a picture together. We would forget to take a picture. Maybe like when they're going to the airport, or at the airport is when we click picture because we forgot about it, or like at like horrible places without makeup or like things like that, So for me, I haven't had that moment, but one fangirl, I would say, I wouldn't say exactly a fangirl moment, but one moment where I felt really, really proud of what we were doing was when we did the card concert. A lot of things went behind the card concert, and we just had to take a leap of faith and just do it within a month. It was that difficult, and we had to execute everything. It was a struggle, but we wanted to do it, and it went on. And we had this concert in Guwahati. And I remember our, when we were doing this concert, we were all, wondering how it would go, because we had like this time frame that we had to work on and places to do. So we finally settled on Guwahati, and we did a concert there. It was an open air concert, and it was we were worried about it. But then in between the concert, BM, he was like announcing, he in just between the concert, he was like, this is the best outdoor show ever that we have done. And I was like, I felt like, okay, that's our moment, so I would say like, that's our moment, I would say, because other than that, when we meet also, or when we interview artists, I haven't really had that fangirl moment, and I'm waiting for my fangirl moment with
G-Dragon for you, and already there is a lot of envy coming for Riddhi. Lucky you got a chance to speak to Namjoon. So well, she's a girl that we all envy, and there's Monica also. Monica, tell me your fangirl moment. Yeah, hua nahi hai.
I don't know. To be very honest, I think I started K-pop after a couple of years covering Bollywood. So kind of it had gone completely down there is a professionalism, so it kind of died down a lot of things, because I always fangirl on Twitter. I think everyone knows at this point. I
think we all do that.
Everyone knows that I have some kind of vibe going on there. Apart from that, I think personally I've never done that. 2 days ago, I spoke to Jung Hae-in. He's been one of my favorite actors for the longest time.
Yeah, I sent you hearts also, and very envious of you. It's out in the open.
This is the first Korean actor interview that I've done on a one-on-one basis. So it kind of was a little, what do you call it? I was nervous, but he's very humble in general. So it was very chill. I think it was so amazing. I think I blacked out totally. So I kind of, it went. I feel the only time I've not had that kind of insane amount of fangirl moment in front of an artist, because I feel over the years you kind of realize that is not something you want to show, because if the man sees, maybe not they give you interview the kind of things that you want. At the end of every interview, I do tell them that India also has a very huge fan base, and if they do come to India, we would love to that would be a big opportunity for us as well to just watch you guys on stage. Apart from that, I don't do enough fangirling, I guess, on camera, rather than I do a lot of things on Twitter.
I think we all do it on social media.
Probably I'll do that is, if at all BTS or GOT7 members do come to India ever, I think that is where I lose my mind, I guess.
GOT7, Bam Bam. My friend is a huge
GOT7.
fan.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I think Monica is
Bam
going to have a
Bam.
fangirl moment very
Monica
soon.
will
Yeah?
die. Like I'm telling
I
you.
think,
I
one of the
will-
things that's happening with me is slowly, but soon I think I'll tell people what's happened. But but yeah,
Let's
it's something.
manifest it for all of us. I mean, I also fangirl only on Instagram. It's because you're professional. You have to look very professional. You don't say things out aloud. So I had interviewed Juji Hoon in 2018. And as you were talking about India, none of the Indian channels were like, who is he? Will it resonate? I was like, wait a minute. He shared screen space with Ji Chang Wook. I'm interviewing him. And guess what? It did well. So we're just hoping that each one of us has a fangirl moment. Ladies, absolutely a pleasure speaking to you all. And today I've actually learned a lot more about K-pop because I'm more inclined towards K-drama. But thank you so much for joining me. And we have a lot coming on InKo, so keep tuned in. Lots of activities, hobby classes, talks. There will be a show on K-dramas. Do write in what you want to watch. So log on to www.infocentre.org or follow us on Instagram. Thank you so much, ladies. May the force,
Thank
or
you,
may
Puja.
BTS, maybe GOT7,
Thank you so
maybe,
much.
whatever you want be with you. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you
you.
so
Thank you
much,
guys.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
having us,
Thank you
Puja.
so much. Thank
It
you.
was a
It
pleasure
was
having you.
fun.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Take care, all of you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.